What happens when the architect finally snaps? When months of manipulation, betrayal, and mind games push one of WWE's most unpredictable superstars past his breaking point? Tonight, we're breaking down one of the most intense backstage confrontations in recent WWE history, the moment Seth Rollins got his revenge on the Wiseman himself, Paul Heyman. I'm your host here at Suplex Rumble, and if you love backstage drama, long-term storytelling, and wrestling justice being served, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because we're diving deep into this explosive encounter. Let's rewind the clock and understand exactly how we got to this moment, because in professional wrestling, context is everything. For months, Paul Heyman had been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. As the special counsel and advocate, Heyman's silver tongue had been working overtime, and Seth Rollins found himself repeatedly on the receiving end of Heyman's schemes. Think about it, every time Rollins was on the verge of a major opportunity, there was Heyman, whispering in the right ears, making the right phone calls, planting seeds of doubt with management. It was psychological warfare at its finest, and the visionary was being systematically dismantled by the greatest advocate in sports entertainment history. But here's what makes Seth Rollins one of the most dangerous men in WWE. He's not just physically gifted, he's cerebral. He's called the architect for a reason. And while Heyman thought he was 10 steps ahead, Rollins was studying, watching, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. The backstage area became a powder keg. You could feel the tension every time these two crossed paths. Heyman's smug confidence, Rollins' barely contained rage. Something had to give, and on this particular night, it finally did. This wasn't just about one superstar confronting another. This was about respect. This was about Rollins reclaiming his narrative. In an industry where perception is reality, Heyman had painted Rollins into a corner, and the visionary needed to send a message not just to Heyman, but to everyone watching: I will not be disrespected. Now let's break down what actually happened in this backstage encounter, moment by moment. Picture this: backstage after a massive show. The adrenaline is still pumping through the arena. Superstars are heading back to their locker rooms. Production crew members are breaking down equipment. And there, in the hallway near gorilla position, stands Paul Heyman, cell phone in hand, no doubt orchestrating his next move. Enter Seth Rollins. According to reports from those who witnessed the encounter, Rollins didn't come in guns blazing. No, this was calculated. He approached Heyman calmly, almost too calmly. That's when you know something big is about to happen in wrestling. It's the calm before the storm. The conversation started with Rollins addressing months of grievances. Every slight, every manipulation, every time Heyman had cost him an opportunity. And here's where it gets interesting. Heyman, true to form, tried to talk his way out of the situation. That silver tongue went into overdrive. Deflection, justification, the classic Heyman playbook of using words as weapons. But for once, the words weren't working. You could see it in Heyman's body language. The usual confidence was cracking. This is where things escalated from verbal to physical. Now, we need to be clear here: WWE has strict policies about backstage conduct, and this situation was handled within those parameters. But make no mistake, Rollins made his point in a way that couldn't be ignored. Reports indicate that Rollins got physical not in a reckless way, but in a manner that sent an unmistakable message. Whether it was backing Heyman against a wall, getting nose-to-nose, or putting hands on the Wiseman in some capacity, the intimidation factor was through the roof. Imagine being Paul Heyman in that moment. You're a non-wrestler advocate who's made a career out of hiding behind others. And now, you're face-to-face with one of the most athletically gifted and intense performers on the roster, and there's nowhere to run. What makes this encounter so memorable is what happened next. Security and other superstars rushed to the scene because when you hear that Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman are going at it, everybody wants to see what happens next. But here's the crucial detail: the damage was done. Rollins had gotten his revenge. He'd made Heyman feel vulnerable, exposed, and powerless. For someone whose entire persona is built on being the smartest person in the room, the humiliation stings deeper than any physical blow. Let's talk about why this moment resonates so deeply with wrestling fans, because it's not just about one guy getting revenge on another. There's layers to this. Typically, Paul Heyman represents the underdog, the guy who uses his brain to overcome physical limitations. But in this scenario, the dynamic flipped. Heyman had been the bully, using his position and influence to torment Rollins. When Rollins finally confronted him, it became a story of righteous revenge. Wrestling fans love this narrative. We love seeing the person who's been wronged finally get their moment of justice. It's cathartic. It's satisfying. It's why we watch. What makes this storyline even richer is Seth Rollins himself. This is a guy who's played every role imaginable: the cocky heel, the fighting champion, the revolutionary leader. His character has depth and evolution. When Rollins goes after Heyman, it's not one-dimensional. You understand his frustration. You've watched him be manipulated and undermined. So when he finally snaps, you're not just watching a confrontation, you're watching the culmination of a character arc. And then there's Heyman. Love him or hate him, Paul Heyman is one of the greatest talkers in wrestling history. His ability to generate heat, to make you feel something, is unmatched. But what happens when the talker can't talk his way out? What happens when words fail? That vulnerability is rarely seen from Heyman, and that's what made this encounter so compelling. We got to see a side of Heyman that's usually hidden, the side that's just a regular person when stripped of his mystique and protection. There's something uniquely intense about backstage confrontations. Unlike in-ring segments where everything is choreographed and controlled, backstage moments feel more raw, more real. The production quality might be grittier, the camera angles less polished, but that adds to the authenticity. When WWE presents these backstage encounters, they're giving us a glimpse behind the curtain, showing us what happens when the cameras aren't supposed to be rolling. It creates this feeling that we're seeing something we're not supposed to see, and that's incredibly engaging. The moment this encounter happened, social media erupted. Twitter was on fire. Reddit wrestling communities were analyzing every frame. YouTube channels like this one were preparing deep dives. Why? Because wrestling works best when it makes you feel something. This confrontation wasn't just technically impressive or athletically stunning, it was emotionally resonant. People connected with Rollins' frustration, enjoyed seeing Heyman squirm, and couldn't wait to see what happened next. So what happened after this explosive confrontation? Let's examine the consequences and how this moment changed the landscape. In professional wrestling, actions have consequences, at least in storyline. After Rollins got his revenge, WWE had several directions they could go. Would there be official ramifications? Would Heyman's clients seek retribution on his behalf? Would management get involved? These questions created immediate intrigue for what would happen next on WWE programming. The beauty of a moment like this is that it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It affects other storylines, other relationships, and creates new opportunities for compelling television. For Rollins, this confrontation represented a statement of intent. He wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. He wasn't going to let Heyman manipulate him from the shadows. This was the visionary taking control of his own narrative. Character-wise, this kind of moment is gold. It shows agency, it shows strength, and it gives the audience a reason to invest even more deeply in Rollins' journey. For Heyman, this was a rare moment of vulnerability. How does someone with his ego respond to being humiliated? Does he seek revenge through his client? Does he try to manipulate his way back to the upper hand? The storytelling possibilities are endless. Here's where WWE's interconnected storytelling really shines. This confrontation between Rollins and Heyman doesn't just affect them, it ripples outward to affect everyone in their orbit. Other superstars might look at Rollins differently now, seeing him as someone who won't back down. Heyman's client might feel obligated to defend his advocate's honor. Management might need to address the situation publicly. Every action in wrestling should create reaction, and this confrontation created multiple reactions across the roster. One of the things that makes WWE storytelling great when it's firing on all cylinders is the long-term payoff. This confrontation might seem like a conclusion, but it could also be the beginning of an even bigger story. Maybe this leads to a massive match down the line. Maybe it creates an alliance you wouldn't expect. Maybe it fragments relationships and creates new dynamics. The best wrestling moments don't just provide immediate satisfaction, they plant seeds for future stories. Let's put on our booking caps and think about where this story could go from here. The most obvious direction is that this backstage confrontation leads to a sanctioned match. Whether it's Rollins versus Heyman's client in a grudge match, or some kind of stipulation match where Heyman's future is on the line, there are multiple ways to capitalize on this heat. WWE has a history of turning backstage moments into major pay-per-view attractions. The emotional investment is already there now, it's about channeling that into a larger story. Another interesting direction would be if this confrontation becomes the flashpoint for a larger conflict. Maybe other superstars who've been wronged by Heyman rally around Rollins. Maybe Heyman recruits additional clients to protect him going forward. Faction warfare creates more opportunities for different superstars to get involved, generates multiple matches, and can sustain a storyline for months. Perhaps the most compelling angle would be using this as part of a redemption arc for Rollins. Maybe he's been struggling, maybe he's been in a slump, but this moment of standing up to Heyman becomes the catalyst for him reclaiming his spot at the top of WWE. These kinds of character journeys resonate with audiences because we all understand what it's like to face adversity and need to find our strength again. It's also worth considering the real-world implications. Moments like this generate buzz, create social media engagement, and get people talking about WWE. From a business perspective, this kind of content is valuable because it reminds fans why they love wrestling in the first place. When fans are emotionally invested, they tune in, they subscribe to Peacock or WWE Network, they buy tickets, they purchase merchandise. A well-executed backstage confrontation isn't just good storytelling, it's good business. So there you have it, Suplex Rumble Nation. Seth Rollins getting his revenge on Paul Heyman backstage was more than just a moment of chaos, it was a carefully crafted piece of storytelling that showcased why we love professional wrestling. We got intense drama, emotional payoff, character development, and the promise of even more exciting stories to come. This is what wrestling is all about, making you feel something, making you care about what happens next. What did you think of this confrontation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Rollins was justified? What should happen next? And who else would you like to see stand up to Paul Heyman? If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Suplex Rumble for more wrestling analysis and breakdowns, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Follow us on social media for extra content, live reactions, and community discussions about all things wrestling. Remember, in professional wrestling, revenge is a dish best served with a side of drama, and Seth Rollins served it up perfectly. I'm your host, and until next time, keep wrestling, keep watching, and keep living that Suplex Rumble life.